As the scapular is the devotion of consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. It creates the state of union with Mary. It puts us in the atmosphere of holiness. Pope Pius XII and the Bishop of Fatima officially ratified this judgment. In an encyclical letter in July 1951, Pope Pius XII said, "Let it, the Brown Scapular, be for all the sign of consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary." The Pope is the supreme ruler in the government of the Church. As the Vicar of Jesus Christ on earth, he speaks with the authority of God. However, to understand the importance of the Pope's statements on the scapular, it is necessary to distinguish the kinds of papal pronouncements. The Pope may speak in three different ways, each varying in authority and in their binding power. The Pope may speak as the head of the Church, ex cathedra, from the chair of St. Peter, solemnly defining some doctrine of the faith. To deny this formal pronouncement would be heresy. Or again, the Pope may speak as indicating the mind of the Church. This is done, usually, through the form of encyclicals. To deny this kind of statement would be rash and close to heresy. Finally, the Holy Father may speak as an individual in a matter that concerns the whole Church. To contradict him in such an expression would be imprudent and against the mind of the Church. His approval, even as an individual, of any devotion in the Church is a kind of visible trademark of God attesting the genuineness of that devotion. For we cannot separate from the Holy Father his unique character as Vicar of Christ. His words will always be sacred to us. The popes have never made any formal ex cathedra pronouncements concerning the scapular, but they have made pronouncements similar to encyclicals in indicating the mind of the Church on the scapular, and pontiffs for many centuries have given their own private testimonies to the scapular, confirming its power and value as a sacramental par excellence. It is of these that we wish to consider. I am not going to go into all the papal pronouncements here. That would take too long. Instead, I will select those passages that are outstanding and show so strong belief in the power of Mary's scapular. Pope Leo XI, 1605, has left his scapular testament in brief but eloquent words. At the papal investiture, when his scapular was removed accidentally from his shoulders, he said, "Leave me, Mary, lest Mary leave me." The next pope to have a special witness to the scapular is Pius IX, whose pontificate of 32 years is the longest in the history of the Church and ranks among the most memorial. On December 8, 1854, he defined the dogma of the Immaculate Conception. No doubt, the same love of Mary that instigated this definition also prompted him to say, "This most extraordinary gift of the scapular, from the Mother of God to St. Simon's Stock, brings its great usefulness not only to the Carmelite family of Mary, but also to all the rest of the faithful who wish, affiliated to that family, to follow Mary with a special devotion." The successor to Pius IX was a no less brilliant man, Leo XIII, 1878 to 1903. He is most noted, perhaps, for his encyclicals on social and labor reforms, which have given him the title, quote, "the working man's pope," unquote. But to Carmelites he is best remembered for his remarkable love for Our Lady of Mount Carmel and her scapular. He said, "Its nobility of origin, its venerable antiquity, its extraordinary spread in the Church, the spiritualizing effects produced by it, and the outstanding miracles worked in virtue of it, render the scapular of Carmel commendable to a wondrous degree." And as he saw his death approaching, this great Pope called his close friends to his bed and said, "Let us make a novena to Our Lady of the Scapular, and I shall be ready to die." In 1914, the year in which the First World War broke out, Benedict XV ascended the throne of St. Peter. Pope Benedict XV worked tirelessly to put an end to the war and to arrange a just peace. His efforts failed, and it is said he died of a broken heart. But if his pleas for peace fell upon deaf ears, his militant exhortation to Catholics to wear the scapular did not. He declared, "Let all of you have a common language and a common armor. The language, the saying of the Gospels. The common armor, the scapular of the Virgin of Carmel, which you all ought to wear, and which enjoys the singular privilege of protection even after death." A pope more familiar to us was Pius XI, 1922 to 1939, known as, quote, "the Pope of the Foreign Missions," unquote. He was especially devoted to the little flower whom he canonized and made patroness of world missions. But long before he knew little Therese, he had come under the influence of Carmel. He was heard to say, "I learned to love the scapular Virgin in the arms of my mother." Now, what significance do these statements of the popes have for us wearers of the scapular? First, it should strengthen our faith in the efficacy of the scapular. The wonderful promise attached to the scapular reads so much like a fairy tale that we may forget it is not a fairy tale. In the light of these papal pronouncements, however, the last remnants of skepticism concerning the scapular should melt away. Some Catholics have been inclined to believe that the scapular and its promise are for simple, pious people only. Others underrate the power of the scapular. The inspiring words of the popes should dispel these wrong attitudes. Secondly, the papal statements give the scapular a singular prestige. They are an implicit call to action, to spread the wearing of the scapular among all the faithful. If actions speak louder than words, then there are many more eulogies of the popes on the scapular than I have recorded here. There is no instance of a pope not having worn the scapular since Simon Stock's time. If we could exhume their bodies, certainly we would find many more like Pope Gregory X. The remains of this pope, who died in 1276, were disinterred in 1830. There, in the old tomb, a small scapular was lying over the pontiff's shoulders, incorrupt. It is the oldest scapular extant, and is now in perfect preservation in the Museum of Arezzo, Italy. Most of the popes, like ourselves, took the scapular for granted. Only when our health is suddenly threatened do we seem to appreciate it. So it is with the things of our religion. Just when he was in the chance of losing it, did Pope Leo XI realize what a precious part of his faith the scapular was. And in that moment he expressed the intrinsic sentiments of all of us in those simple words, "Leave me, Mary, lest Mary leave me." To further increase our loving devotion to the scapular of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, as the sign of consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Let us review some of the facts relating how the popes enriched the scapular. On the feast of St. Simon Stock, May 16, 1892, Pope Leo XIII gave scapular lovers a wonderful surprise. On that date, His Holiness gave to the feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel the privilege of a plenary indulgence, applicable to the souls in Purgatory, to all who visit a Carmelite church. The Holy Father went even further. He made this indulgence what is known technically as a totius quotius indulgence. That is, the plenary indulgence could be gained not just once, but for each visit to the church. The Holy Father's purpose in granting this favor was, as he stated it, to increase more and more among the faithful devotion and piety towards the Most Blessed Virgin Mary of Mount Carmel, whence flows the richest and most wholesome fruits for the soul. Pope Leo XIII's expression of love for members of Our Lady's family of the scapular was the turning point of recent times in devotion to the scapular. But it is not a solitary example of the Church's concern for the Brown Scapular of Mary to say that, quote, the popes enriched the scapular, unquote, is to phrase in a few scant words the unparalleled record of papal interest in the garment given by the Queen of Carmel to the Catholic world. Speaking of the scapular promise, Blessed Claude de Colombier, Jesuit confessor and associate of St. Margaret Mary Alacoque, wrote in the 17th century, in that celebrated promise, Mary reveals all the tenderness of her heart. The Church has made her own the opinion of Blessed Claude, for in word and action the popes have enthusiastically called devotion to Mary's gift. Concerning the first scapular promise, Our Lady's guarantee of salvation, the Church's attitude has always been one of approval. Carmelites have been not merely permitted, but encouraged to spread their scapular devotion to the whole world. The second great scapular promise, of delivery from Purgatory on the Saturday after death, was first announced in a papal document, in the Sabbatine Bull. The announcement was made in 1322 by Pope John the 22nd. 15 popes since that time have added the weight of their approval to the original grant. As recently as Pope Pius X, the Sabbatine privilege is expressly mentioned by the Holy Father. When Pope Pius X extended the use of the scapular medal to all the faithful, he said that he meant to include the Sabbatine privilege of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, as well as all other spiritual favors. Speaking of the same privilege, the late Pope Pius XI said, "Everyone should strive for it." It was due to the Pope's desire that the pious custom of being enrolled in the scapular might continually increase that permission to substitute the scapular medal was extended in 1910 to all Catholics. At an earlier date, the same privilege of the medal had been given to the people in missionary countries. In 1912, the Pope of the Eucharist, St. Pius X, gave a further proof of also being a Pope of the Scapular of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, by giving soldiers and sailors the unique privilege of enrolling themselves in the scapular confraternity. All the soldiers or sailor needs to do is put on the scapular or the scapular medal previously blessed by a priest having the power to enroll in the scapular. By the very fact of putting on the cloth, scapular, or the medal, reciting at the same time any prayer to Mary, the serviceman automatically becomes a member of the scapular confraternity. During the recent war, the scapular militia sent out millions of blessed scapulars and medals, bringing Mary's protection to servicemen. The Church's love for the scapular is shown again in the fact that the scapular feast is officially celebrated by the whole Catholic world. The Brothers of Our Lady of Mount Carmel have their own special calendar of feasts. In this calendar are included 25 separate feasts of Our Lady. Some of these are not kept by the whole Church, but since 1726, the anniversary of July 16th has been shared by all Catholics. It bears the name Solemn Commemoration of the Blessed Virgin Mary of Mount Carmel, a commemoration or remembering of everything Mary has done for her children of Carmel, but particularly the glad recalling of her scapular gift given on July 16, 1251. The scapular ranks with the rosary as being the only other Marian gift to be commemorated on the Church's universal calendar. But there is one evidence of papal interest in the scapular which we have hardly mentioned up to now, and apart from the two great promises, this fact is the most outstanding thing about the scapular. I am referring to the extraordinary number of indulgences which the popes have granted to scapular wearers. Pope Sixtus IV granted to members of the scapular confraternity all the privileges, indulgences, grants, and favors which are granted to the court of St. Francis, to the Rosary of Our Blessed Lady, or to any confraternity whatsoever. At Fatima, Mary pleaded for a consecration in which we give ourselves in a surrender of love. In the last apparition at Fatima, Mary gave us the outward sign of this consecration when Mary appeared as Our Lady of Mount Carmel and held the brown scapular in her outstretched hand. It is the same mark of salvation given by Mary to St. Simon Stock, saying, "Whosoever dies wearing this shall not suffer eternal fire. It shall be a sign of salvation, a protection in danger, and a pledge of peace." Our Lady said nothing when she held out her scapular at Fatima. No words were necessary, because Our Lady's scapular had been a sign of special dedication to her for the past 700 years. It should now remind all Catholics of consecration to Mary's Immaculate Heart. In 1929, Our Lady again returned and requested that the world, Russia in particular, be dedicated to her Immaculate Heart by the Holy Father. Twice in the year 1942, Pope Pius XII consecrated the world, and Russia in particular, to Mary's Immaculate Heart. Recently, in the Philippine Islands, Our Lady mentioned to the little Carmelite postulant the fact that she wanted us to make our consecration to her in the spirit of St. Louis Marie de Montfort. Thank you for listening. To obtain other Catholic books on cassette tapes and Catholic hymns,